Good evening. I'm Jim Ninsel, the political reporter for TucsonSentinel.com, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate between the candidates for Pima County Sheriff. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor of this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections is the official sponsor of Arizona debates, so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter most to them, and cast an informed vote. All registered voters can cast a ballot in the general election, which will be held on November 5th. The voter registration deadline is October 7th, and early voting begins on October 9th. Voters who are watching this debate live, you can submit a question at any time by email. That's debates@kc-a.com. Text your questions to 408-840-8350 or phone your questions in at 480-937-1253. We may not get to all the audience questions, but we will do our best. Over the next hour, you'll be hearing from incumbent Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, a Democrat who is seeking a second full term, and Lieutenant Heather Lappin, the Republican challenger who has worked nearly 2 decades in a variety of roles at the Sheriff's Department. Thank you both for joining us. Each candidate will have 1 minute for opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for responses to voter questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between the opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments after they conclude speaking, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may stay informed. And with that out of the way, let's start with the opening statements. Sheriff Nanos, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Clean Elections, for hosting this debate. There's a lot of issues out there for voters to consider, but one of the biggest issues that will clearly distinguish myself from my opponent is that work in experience, actual practicum in doing the job, not just training and education, but actually doing the work. I've been in law enforcement for over 40 plus years, spent my time in every corner this agency has. I have worked from corrections to administration to criminal investigations, patrol, but most importantly, probably the last 15 years has been in executive leadership roles, something that my opponent clearly doesn't have, and that is there's a big gap between a lieutenant all the way to sheriff. You have 4 major ranks there that are just not there, that I've not just spent time there, I grew there 2 or 3 years, 5 years, 6 years in each of those areas, from a captain to a chief deputy to a sheriff. There's a lot of learning there. I'm still learning. And I'm most of all, I'm just really grateful to this community and the voters for giving me an opportunity 4 or 5 years ago to come in here and do a job that, not many of us, it's pretty humbling. It's quite an honor. Not many of us have the opportunity to make decisions that impacts our entire community. So yes, I'm honored, I'm humbled, and I hopefully look forward to another 4 years because we've done a lot, but we've got a lot more to do.
All right, Lieutenant Lappin, your opening statement.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Jim, and thank you so much, Clean Elections. I appreciate being here. As you said, my name's Heather Lappin. I do celebrate 20 years with the department in December. I started off as a cash window girl. I worked midnights in the jail, and I was actually pregnant with my second son when I did that. And I'm deeply grateful to this department for hiring me pregnant. I've always held a soft spot to the department for that. And then when I came back from maternity leave, I saw a flyer for deputy, and the rest is history, so they say. So I do not deny that I don't have the 40 years of experience that the sheriff has. Absolutely, he's correct, and I commend him for his experience. I do come with my own version of experience, though, in that I have a wide variety of networking. I have a education, which I thought we'd get into later, but I do have a master's in organizational leadership with a emphasis in criminal justice, which no one in the command staff, to include the sheriff, has. And as we know in law enforcement, we'll talk about reform. Education matters these days, and because of that, I also have I'm a working mom. I've raised 3 children in this city, and I have experience. I represent our community. When you sit with a silver spoon in your mouth and judge other people for their hardships that they've gone through, and you know the resiliency that they've built, that's what I come with. I come with a representation for the community. But I am here because I have a vision for this department. I really do. The vision is to enact trustworthiness and build those bridges of trust between the community and the department back better. We have to give procedural justice internally and externally to the community. And these visions take leadership, and leadership is what I am a student of. I am a student of leadership, which we'll get into a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Lappin, what do you see as the role of law enforcement in our community?
Law enforcement is so important to partner. I think partnerships say it all. When we sit at tables with people, it creates a community. We have to have partnerships with the Board of Supervisors. We have to have relationships with the Board of Supervisors so that we can get funding for certain things. We have to have relationships with all community members, different groups, social services, gospel rescue mission, you name it. The partnerships are what matter in law enforcement, because if you don't have the partnerships, you don't have the ability to understand what your community needs and wants. Sometimes we have the problem where we refuse to sit at tables with other people because maybe we're not the most popular at that table. And I disagree with that. And I think we should be sitting at all tables to give everyone a voice. As I mentioned earlier, that is one of my visions, to give the community a voice, meaning all community. Doesn't mean just Democrats. It doesn't mean just Republicans. It means all community members, so that they have a voice and they can have a way to influence our law enforcement agency. Because the law enforcement is based on legitimacy, right? So if we don't have legitimacy with the public, we're losing. It's a losing battle.
All right, same question to you, Sheriff Nanos. What do you see as the role of law enforcement in our community?
Pretty clear. It's pretty simple. Is to be engaged with your community. Is to know what they need and what they want to keep them safe. That's what it's all about. Is public safety. Leadership is not throwing insults around at your opponent, name calling. Attacking personal family members, silver spoon. I came from a family of 10, where what my mom and dad raised us, because my dad was a mechanic and my mom was stay-at-home mom. I don't know her background, nor do I care to know it. But you can't just go around and slander people and come back and say you've run a clean election. You know, I've never said a word about her or her family, but she obviously has some concerns in that regard, and rightfully so. Let me just say this. Refusing to sit at the table is one thing. Joining a boys club, if you will, the Arizona Sheriff's Association, let's be honest, that's all that is a boys club. They're in it for politics. I was their vice president. I was there for less than 1 month, and they nominated me vice president, but I refused to engage in politics. I don't need to run for office on all of my decisions. What I need to do is make the right decision every time. And that's what we teach our staff. We make decisions based on what we believe is right in our heart. And if you can't make a right decision, you can make mistakes. I make them every day. but they're mistakes of the head, never the heart. And I challenge my partner, my colleague across there, Lieutenant Lappin, to talk about her mistakes and her transgressions, because that's all she's done is talk about bringing integrity back to the department. First of all, that's a slap in the face of the many young men and women here who work hard every day. If you want to say there's an integrity problem with the sheriff, why don't you say that? But you better have facts. You better have data behind it, because she doesn't. But yet she's gone on with that rhetoric. Look, community policing, you can't police your community without community policing. And that's something we've always done here. We've created community policing programs and projects that don't take away from patrol, as my partner here would say. They actually augment patrol. They handle more patrol calls so that patrol doesn't have to worry about those calls, that they can go do the things they need to do and deal with calls for service. No, that's where that experience comes in. You can have all the book knowledge you want, but until you've actually done it, worked it, you can't do it. Someone with less than 7 months on in the field can sit here and tell somebody who worked patrol for 10 years what it's like to work in the field. Someone who's never investigated a homicide, a sex crimes, a rape case, a child abuse case, worked undercover, worked narcotics, is going to tell me how to do police work because she has an education that I don't have. I'm sorry. I have more of an education than she'll ever know, but I don't use that as my trophy to say this makes me qualified. What makes me qualified is the work we have done. We have done some great work in times that nobody else knew about. Nobody else was challenged to. Times where we came in where there was a pandemic. You couldn't hire people. Circle K's couldn't hire people. Yet we came in here. I left here in 2016 with 1,686 employees. Fact. Came here in 2021 with 1,282. 25% reduction. I could have just thrown my hands up and went, oh my goodness, what do I do? Or I could do the work. I could have made name blame and yelled at others, or do the work. We chose to do the work. We recruited at a rate where attrition reduced from 7 at our jail to 3, and in the field from 4 to 1.8. We've done a lot of good work, but there's more to do, because leaders also don't just look back at their accomplishments. They have a plan, a vision. They know what to do ahead. She's never had a plan. She said on the radio 6 months ago, oh, I have a plan, but it's in my head. Here we are 6 months later, been at this for a year, and we've still not heard a plan. I have a plan.
Let's move on to our next question. And this one will start with Sheriff Nanos. There's been much talk in recent years regarding criminal justice reform. What are your thoughts about the state of criminal justice in our community, and what, if anything, do you think needs to change?
Well, yeah, for law enforcement, it's simple. Reform is just basically about what do we see? What did we see out in the world today? We recognize that the traditional law enforcement methods don't work. The pyramid we have for an org chart isn't the best way to do things anymore. San Diego police chief yesterday was talking about how he wants to round out that top, where your organizational structure is broader, it's not so linear, where you can actually have more captains, more lieutenants who are involved with staff to do staff development. Because let's face it, we're a very young workforce. We probably average about 3 to 4 years out in the field of deputies and sergeants. So that experience, I came in here, every commander just about had left. All my chiefs were gone. All the captains were gone. I had nothing to work with. I could again sit back and do nothing, or actually make stuff happen. We went through a process. We promoted enough people, because this is too big a job. I can't do it myself. So we got the people in place, people that wanted to do the work. I don't want to hear the griping. I want to get the job done. And we've done that. We've recruited, today, As we sit here, we're 90-some%. In about 5 weeks, we'll be over 100% staffing. That gets us to 1,479. She talks about partnerships. I've worked with Ms. Lesher, the county administrator. I've worked with the Board of Supervisors. We've worked out to get our budget, to get a pay study done. That was my idea. Let's get a pay study done. And now what have we done? We've gotten more pay for everybody across the board, not just little groups of organizations that support me or don't support. No, those days are gone. We work for everybody every day. We got our pay up. That helps with morale. It helps with retention. But the real issue is it's how you treat your staff. See, when I came here, they had over 1,100 bullying complaints from the past administration. Someone she's endorsed, someone that endorses her. 1,100 bullying complaints. Over 3,000 work orders at the jail. Nothing, just completely ignored. And yet we came in and did the work. We were able to recruit. We sat down and said, what's the best working, what works best? Buses, advertisements on the sides of TV, radio, going out to San Diego and sitting on the pier and asking people to join us and hand out things as the sailors get off the boat. No, the best thing, and we've known it all along, is our own staff, word of mouth. But if you don't like working here, if you don't like your bosses, how can I ever expect you to go out and tell your neighbor, please come join us? So we knew that going in.
I want to tackle the recruitment and staffing issues in a moment, but let's go back to the question, which was much talk in recent years about criminal justice reform. What are your thoughts about the state of criminal justice in our community, and what, if anything, do you think needs to change, Lieutenant?
You know, there's
first,
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yes,
please.
Oh, it's me. Okay, thank you. Yes. So I think that it's so important to understand that expectations have evolved. We can look back at, post 9/11, pre 9/11, what we expected from our law enforcement, and things have changed dramatically, and we have to keep up on those expectations of our community. Again, I talk about legitimacy. The power of the people the power of law enforcement comes from the people. If the people do not find law enforcement legitimate, they aren't going to respect them. They aren't going to listen to them. We're going to have a tough time, and we will fail. So I say that, first of all, I think it's important that you take a page out of Obama's 21st Century Policing Report, the task force that he had on that. And the one thing that they did that I was very impressed with is that they had forums all over the United States, and then the other thing they did was they got over 100 diverse stakeholders throughout the country, and they just sat down and listened. They had great listening sessions. We do that as a department, and we speak to our community. I went and sat with about 30 individuals this weekend. It was Monday I went. And these individuals feel very, very disenfranchised by law enforcement. They feel profiled, they feel bullied, and there was a lot they had to say about law enforcement, not necessarily just the sheriff's department, but law enforcement in general. A lot of it was the sheriff's department. And when I sit there and I listen to them, and I actually listen to them, and I write down their concerns, and I think about their concerns, that's what matters to community. So reform, in my opinion, reform includes social services and incorporating those social services into law enforcement. The person that Sheriff Nanos is referring to, Sheriff Napier, he does endorse me. He says his numbers are made up. I'm not sure about those, but what I will say is that he had a wonderful program that was sponsored by the Board of Supervisors to have social service workers coming out onto patrol with our deputies. And it was doing a couple things. Now, we know there's a narrative against law enforcement that is somewhat, negative, right? So what that does by partnering social services with our law enforcement deputies, it's humanizing everybody, right? Everybody's human. You're getting to know people, and our deputies are getting to know a different side, and our social services are getting to know a different side. And so by doing that, we're also taking some work off the plates of our deputies. work that they are not qualified. We make them do. We overtask them with all these jobs. They're babysitters, they're, counselors, they're marriage counselors. You should see what we have to do in the field. And by the way, I had more than 7 months in the field. But anyway, I think it's important that we look at social services in a different light. How are we going to incorporate those? One other thing I think we should do is I think we should utilize that annex for social services. We have La Frontera, we have Bridges, we have the Transition Center. We could move them over to the annex and make a one-stop shop with their money. It doesn't have to be our money, but we could create this conglomerate like other cities in the United States do that offer these wraparound services. La Frontera just did a study that said that 35% of the homeless, unsheltered population doesn't have an ID. Let's fix that. I've also worked with I forget the name of the organization, but what they do is they get judges that come together and also wraparound services, and they bring everybody in to help quash warrants. Like, let's be involved in those kind of things. But I am huge on education, and the sheriff's right. I am huge on education because I know I am a different, more compassionate person with my education than I was without. I understand social issues way better with my education. And I don't need, and I apologize for this, I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't need 40 years of doing things an old-fashioned, antiquated way to know how to run this department. I know how to run this department because I know people, and that's my talent.
Well, let's talk about your experience in law enforcement, Lieutenant Lappin, and this will go to you next, Sheriff Nanos. Talk about your experience in law enforcement and management and how your skills make you the right person for the job.
Sure. Thank you. So I do celebrate 20 years with the department, as I said, and I have worked a variety of assignments. I've made some mistakes for sure, definitely. I don't deny those mistakes at all. But failure is what really makes us better. Look at Michael Jordan getting cut from his basketball team, right? Like failure is what pushes us forward and makes us better. I have worked a variety of assignments that I won't get into too many details, but one of the best things that I've ever done, I'm most proud of, and I will give the sheriff credit for this because he did allow me to go do this, but I did get to work with Arizona Post, which is our governing agency, and I traveled around Arizona and I was on their leadership team. I was chosen out of the entire state to represent them and train agencies in leadership. As I said, I'm a student of leadership. I believe in a certain type of leadership. I'm big servant leadership. I believe people come first. And because of that, that's why I stood up. That's why I am here today. I have a deep commitment to my community. I have a deep commitment to my department. And I observed a troubling void, in my opinion, in leadership in this department. And that void is impacting not only the department members, but the community, to include those that touch the criminal justice system. So my experience brings that I'm sorry, I'm going to jump back. I also come with business experience. I ran restaurants for years before I came down to Tucson and became a cop. And after that, I've run nonprofits. I was the president of a nonprofit organization for a couple years. I've developed deep networking within our community, and I have been very successful with my leadership. But the one thing I would like to say is that my experience as in resiliency makes me the right choice. And why I say that and why I say I represent the community is because, and the sheriff said he doesn't care to hear my background, but I'm going to tell you anyway, is that I've overcome poverty. I've overcome job loss, which led to financial ruin. I've overcome a child's addiction. I've overcome, and now I stand up every day. Did you know, I'll just let you know this real quick, that The Commanders Association have hired an attorney to try to destroy my life. Not just win the election, they're trying to destroy my life. So I have that backbone. I have that ability to stand up for what I believe is right. I believe in this department. I believe in the people that work for this department, and I think we can make it a safer community and give the community a bigger and better voice.
All right, Sheriff Nanos, your experience in law enforcement and management, how your skills make you the right person for the job?
It's not even close. I've done. There's not been one job in this department that I've ever been thrown out of. Not one. Every job I've taken, I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. I was in love with my current job, and yet I was moved, and I learned that job was great as well. I am so blessed with this agency and the El Paso Police Department for all the tools they have given me to lead. But there are so many things here. I could just go on, but failure only makes us better if we recognize those failings and accept responsibility for them. You can't sit there and tell me you're going to sign false documents, falsified state documents for AC Post, and then tell me that, well, it didn't really matter. It wasn't me. It was the other lieutenant, when clearly it was you. It was you who wanted to sign those documents. You knew in May, 5 months beforehand, that the expert that was required to be in that class to sign off on those documents could not be there, but yet you dismissed them. You said no problem, you would handle it, and you failed to get an expert in there, and now the department's lost its only expert. But you know what really happened there? Is we also lost time with 22 cadets, 22 deputies who came into training, wanted to be trained as general instructors, and needed to sit through a class where there was an expert to validate what was being taught. That's an Arizona Post state rule. And she was willing to sign off on it and say, no, the expert was here, and hand it to the expert who now has lost his teaching abilities and his subject matter expert title. And her response was, well, those 22 will be okay. It's like reps at a gym. You just take more. Because guess what? All 22 of them had to come back and retake the class. A whole week wasted. What was really wasted was $75,000 in taxpayer money for those recruits to come back to take that class.
Let's
There is something here in leadership that is really lacking for Miss Lappin. She has all these platitudes and just political rhetoric, but she has no substance. There is no plan. There are no ideas. There are no thoughts. She put herself out there, came to my office and told me,
okay,
I like you, and I'm going to run because I have new ideas. You gave us 3 minutes. I don't know where I'm at, but she ran off a lot of things there. That's all her campaign has done. It's just falsified things. And so much of it here, I can't even answer your questions because I got to go through everything she's done here. That is, I'm sorry, but she's not accountable. She doesn't take a responsibility. Bringing up her family and my family, it doesn't play into this. The fact that my wife and I had raised our 2-year-old niece, who also had substance abuse problems. We didn't have financial difficulties. I'm not telling you how impoverished my family was. This is just political rhetoric from her side. I answer the question.
Let's give Lieutenant
May I rebut? May I have my 60 seconds?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Just a couple things I would like to, and I'm sorry if I upset you. What I would like to say is that it was your administration, sir, that went to Arizona Post and demanded to be able to hire 3 people. One that had a sexual issue with, a serious sexual issue. The other one who falsified public documents which is what the sheriff announced, and another one who lied to the military. You act like what I did, which is another long story, sir, and I won't even get into that, but they're aggrandizing and they're twisting the story completely, but they continue to be hypocritical in the fact that they'll go to Post and beg to hire somebody who falsified documents, but now they're going to try and call me out for it when that's not even close to what happened. The second thing I would like to say that is important to note is that I am not under investigation by the Attorney General, nor was I under investigation by the FBI.
All right. Let's move on to a new topic. We do live in a border county, and this goes to you first, Sheriff Nanos. What do you see as the role of the sheriff in addressing issues related to immigration?
It's not our role. It's a federal problem. Everybody knows that. Everybody sees it. I cannot let her go unchecked. First of all, when she was sent to AZ Post, I sent her there. And it's a year assignment. In 3 months, AZ Post was calling me saying, we don't need her. Please take her back. That is factual. I have the email from the AZ Post. All you have to do is FOIA these records, FOIA her disciplinary history. You'll see she failed at all levels. To compare yourself as a commander of this organization and say it's okay for you to falsify documents because some recruit, some young kid, 18, 19 years old, made some mistakes in his life, shame on you. Shame on you for saying that. Let me show you here again the lie. First of all, she's now said that, well, we've got an investigation going against her. No, we don't. That the association's attorney's after her. No, what's happened is the association's attorney made a complaint against her for fabricating that her other opponent in the primary said that he was under investigation by the FBI. That attorney, Mike Story, is now suing her for those false accusations with Bill Phillips, his client. I have nothing to do with that. We took the case and gave it to Tucson Police Department to work on. That's their case, but I'm sure she'll say it. But so there is no FBI investigation. She has no proof of that, never has had it. And yet I want to read to you the letter from the Attorney General's office, just real quick here, where it says that the sheriff has a plan in place to investigate internal matters, which is totally appropriate, and that they found zero criminal wrongdoing by this agency in the case that she speaks of, Ricky Garcia. Again, FOIAble records. Everything I've given you is documentation that she herself should know. She can obtain those documents. She can. It's like saying stats. I quoted a stat that on my own Facebook page, she did, that says, hey, crime is up in Pima County. My goodness, it's through the roof. We need leadership. Yet what she failed to point out was that stat in her own writing, if you read it, says these are the city of Tucson stats. I'm not running for the chief of TPD. I am running for sheriff of Pima County. In Pima County, Part 1 crimes, again, something she has access to, anybody can get. The Department of Justice, we return in those stats to them every year. Part 1 crimes, homicide, rape, robbery, sexual assault, all the tough crimes. Over my administration, over the previous administration, we're down 12% in Pima County. Those are real numbers. The border issues, I work every day with John Modlin from the Border Patrol. We have Border Patrol here working with our detectives every day. We are members of a federal support team. We do everything we can to assist Border Patrol when they need it. We don't want to do Border Patrol's job. John Modlin, Chief of Border Patrol, doesn't want to do our job. He has 6,000 agents. He can do his border. I don't need to be down at the border taking a photo op with my AR-15 saying I'm tough on crime. People know me. They know from my experience, they know who I am as a human being, that I care about this community and that I do the things that I believe are right in my heart. That border is a problem created by the federal government, and they need to resolve it. 314 is not a proposition I would ever support. One, we already do those things. If I see you crossing that border illegally, we stop, detain you, and then we call Border Patrol. Now they want us to go ahead and arrest them put them in my jails, backlog our courts, which is their problem. They've so backlogged that asylum seekers have to wait 10 years for court hearings. No, that is the federal government's problem. I have my own problems here in Pima County, and it's called public safety. The border is not my issue. That is somebody else's issue.
Lieutenant Lappin, your thoughts on the role of the sheriff in addressing issues related to immigration, and also your position on Prop 314. Sheriff Nano says he's a no vote on that. And that is the proposition that on the November ballot that would give local law enforcement new authority in arresting people who are in the country illegally, among other provisions.
Correct. So just first of all, I would like to correct the fact that the FBI investigation I was referring to was the 2016 investigation where we had indictments of our chiefs where he was the sheriff. That was the FBI investigation I was referring to. Anyway. I would like to go on to, we have the largest border county in the United States. We have it's the second most populous. It's, it's very large. We have more fentanyl coming through our border than any other area in the United States. Fentanyl is becoming the largest cause of death in ages 18 to 24. We have a huge issue. And our governor, with the help of our sheriff, campaigned on the fact that the border was fuzzy math, okay? And then this fuzzy math, we spent $98 million in federal funds feeding, clothing, housing, and transporting. And I don't think $98 million is fuzzy math. And I think putting blinders on and saying, it's not my job, it's not my job, it's not my job, while he is correct, nobody wants to go patrol the border. And I've never said that. We do have to have better partnerships. I know his predecessor, Mark Napier, had the undersecretary of Homeland Security on speed dial. We had partnerships. When I went down to the border, not with my AR, I did go meet with Sheriff Daniels. Sheriff Daniels and his group of individuals have a nationally recognized program called SABRE. They had a temporary unit for Operation Safe Streets. And it wasn't to combat border crossers, okay? That's not what they're combating. They're combating that human trafficking. That true victims exist with. They're combating the fentanyl that's coming across, the illegal arms that are coming across. That's what they're fighting, because public safety is our number one primary mission. That really is our number one primary mission. And to say that we don't have a problem or it's not our job is disingenuous, in my opinion, to say, because we do have a crisis at our border that, and the sheriff is right, that the federal government did create. But our job is public safety. And if we ignore the fentanyl coming through, if we ignore the human trafficking, if we ignore the arms, we are failing and we're not doing our job. Prop 314, if we've read, and I would like to correct the sheriff quickly, if I may, if you've read the House bill, which I have several times, he is right that we would have to have probable cause of individuals crossing the border in places other than the port of entry. But the other thing that it does for sheriffs that don't want to house inmates who have been arrested by this is that it allows people to go to state prisons in lieu of going to county facilities. So what I would like to say is that it's not the bill itself. I don't know if it's going to pass. I have no idea if it's going to pass. But even if it does, the likelihood of Pima County deputies making any arrest on this bill is very, very low. There's a lot of fear mongering about this bill. They call it another show me your papers bill. It's nothing like that. It's absolutely nothing like that. It puts it empowers the police, which we do work with Border Patrol. It empowers them to make those arrests. But it's just not going to happen. It's not realistic. The people that wrote the bill, I'm assuming, felt helpless. We have a crisis at our border and they wanted to do something. And so, no, I don't think it's a good idea for the bill just because of that aspect of it. So we do agree on that. But it does take partnerships. It does take taking the blinders off.
All right. This next question, we'll start with you, Lieutenant Lappin, and that is, talk about the opioid crisis and how it is affecting Pima County and the role that the Sheriff's Department would play in combating it.
So, like I said, the opioid crisis is absolutely out of control. I think it was KOLD that just did a story on it's 510 overdose deaths in 2023, up 52 from 2022. Now that is fentanyl, and it is methamphetamine. We have a crisis of with our unsheltered population. I think the number is 80% have substance abuse disorder, and a majority of it is fentanyl. Working at the jail, I can tell you that it is a crisis. It is absolutely a crisis. We see people come in that door, and they are destroyed, and they are absolutely destroyed, especially in our detox unit. You're watching people that had such potential, get their bodies destroyed, their minds destroyed, and it is. I think the other number that I found concerning was that the numbers were up from the teen deaths, the teen overdoses, and that's also very scary. We have to be doing more education, more forums, more. We have to be putting staffing our patrol. We have to be putting staff out on patrol. I understand the sheriff's thought process. I'm trying not to make him mad, but the sheriff's thought process is these ancillary units are doing the job that the patrol isn't doing. But when you have these ancillary units, that they can't cover an entire community. Our patrol staffing, I found a staffing document. And I know I'm getting under another topic, and I apologize, but this is part of my solution, is that we have a transition document from Sheriff Napier to Sheriff Nanos, and patrol was staffed had an actual number of 207. We're down 100 at 170, 176, I think, something like that. And what that does is that reduces community policing tremendously. And what it does is it creates firefighters in our deputies, and they can't be proactive, and they can't go out and have conversations with the community and build relationships because they're waiting for the next call to come in. So the opioid crisis requires attention from the Pima County Sheriff's Department for sure. And those partnerships with education and educating parents, educating the kids, educating the community on what to look for and how to help be part of the solution.
All right, Sheriff Nano, same question to you. The opioid crisis and the Sheriff's Department's role in helping the community combat that.
Well, you know what? Fentanyl actually is down. It's something that Lieutenant Lappin doesn't seem to understand. The sad thing about it is the reason it's down is because so many people have died from its use. The other sad thing about it is it's being taken over by another drug called Tranq. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen drugs come and go from meth to cocaine to crack, back to meth to heroin to it flows and ebbs and flows, and it's whatever's the cheapest out there. And it is a shame. And our opioid crisis, really, we can look back at our pharmaceuticals that got this thing started. Fentanyl just finished it off for them. For law enforcement, the role is clearly we need to stop the flow of fentanyl. But the flow of fentanyl isn't anything like the marijuana flow we saw for decades, where they crossed through the borders, through the open deserts with backpacks. These are people who are coming through our ports of entry. Border Patrol admits it, Customs admits it, everybody knows it. You're not seeing people with backpacks with thousands of pills of fentanyl. They're finding them right there at the port of entry. So again, that portion of the transportation of it needs to be better dealt with at our ports of entry with Customs, HSI, those people. Remember, they have a $50 billion budget, 50,000 employees. I think they're capable. It's just up to them as to how they use their resources. My resources at the border, what am I going to do? Put a team of 10 deputies down there to make a political statement? I move my resources around based on need, based on what people actually calls for service. We built 2 substations, put our deputies closer to where they needed to be be able to deal with problems in those neighborhoods, in those communities. Vail, a community that was growing at 19% through the last 10 years, last census, had deputies responding from Catalina Highway and Take Verde, a 45-minute drive. Out here in our Southwest deserts, where their growth rate is tremendous. Again, Star Valley, 4,000 or 5,000 homes went up. We were having people respond to calls over an hour away from their station to areas out in the deserts. What we decided was we need a station to be centered more closely to those people's needs. And so by doing those things, we've lowered our response times. We've been more effective in dealing with those problems in our communities. Putting more deputies on the street is old. She says, I'm old thinking. That's old school police work. I'm not saying we don't need more deputies on the street. Certainly, I could use 100 more deputies. Even if I get to 100%, we would be at 1479. That's the lowest number of our topped out levels in 40, 50 years I've been here. But that's, again, the partnership she's talking about. I've already been speaking with Ms. Lesher and the Board of Supervisors about a plan to devise to get us more deputies to increase our authorized strengths, since we've already come up from 1,280, a level of 75% of our workforce when I got here, to now over 95%. So there's a lot there. Partnerships, PCRIT, the Pima Regional Critical Incident Team. It is a national model. It is something I created with my fellow partners here in our law enforcement community. Couldn't do that without their partnerships. We brought in our school resource officers and knew that they were an impact to our community in dealing with our youth and mentoring them and giving them a safe place to learn. You know, we have a national model for our regional active shooter schools that we put on every summer. These are things that we push forward because the last administration took a team of 12 SROs down to 2. And we brought it back up to where it should be with 22. So every school in the county has a school resource officer available to them. With that, we met with every superintendent. There are 14 schools districts in this county. We met with every superintendent. And one of the most important things I got out of that meeting with them was we told them our plans of how we wanted our SROs to work in their schools. Every one of them was in agreement. But what I really found most important about that really hit me, all 14 superintendents were in that meeting right here in this office. And all 14 said it was the first time ever that they had all been together in one office, that they'd even met each other. That says a lot. That's the partnerships I want to build. I don't want to be in Washington, D.C. like her predecessor, like she wants to do. I don't need to be with the good old boys club who's nothing but constitutional sheriffs. You Google that one and tell me what redeeming quality you find in a constitutional sheriff.
We did get a question on the constitutional sheriff from and I think it's your turn to start, Sheriff Nanos, and your thoughts on this constitutional sheriff theory that's out there, a political movement. The adherents believe that sheriffs are the ultimate law enforcement officials in the nation, supremacy over state and federal officials. What's your take on that?
You can Google it. Anybody can Google constitutional sheriff, and you'll see right off the bat. They are not my words. These are the Southern Poverty Law Enforcement Law Center, the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting. All of these different studies and think tanks are very concerned, and rightfully so, because I'll make it real clear for you. What a constitutional sheriff believes is that simply they are above the law, that they are more important than any federal agency, and that they get to rule. Think real clear. You have law enforcement leaders who believe they are above the law. How is that helpful? That is so dangerous to not just our communities, but our democracy. Yeah, they're a club of white supremacists. Not my words. Just read them. Anti-government sheriff movement, radical law enforcement. Oath keepers. Think about the oath keepers in January 6th. Think about the Proud Boys. A number of these constitutional sheriffs were right there speaking at their conferences. They aligned themselves with this group. And my mom taught me a long time ago, you want to know who you are, look at your friends. You want to know who Heather Lappin is, look at who she's hanging with. All these constitutional sheriffs. I am not for that. If you're wanting a sheriff to strap a gun to their chest and wear a cowboy hat and act all tough, you're voting for the wrong person. That's not who I am.
Lieutenant Lappin, your thoughts on this constitutional sheriff movement?
So it's interesting because right in the beginning, I kept getting that question when I would go places and they would say, are you a constitutional sheriff? And I thought, well, yeah, I believe in the Constitution. Of course I do. But the sheriff is correct. And I don't believe that giving anybody that much power to make those decisions is correct. I do not associate with, I've gone to speak at groups where constitutional sheriffs are there, absolutely. And their heart is good. They're trying to protect people from the woes of COVID that happen and, those kind of things. But I don't think any one person should honestly have that much power. And I want to address two things really quickly, if I may, is the first one that I'd like to address is the fact that the statistic of crime being up was not my statistic. It was a statistic that Suzuki Law Firm put out, and they did a study of all the counties in Arizona. And unfortunately, Pima County, not Tucson Police Department, was the highest in crime per 100,000. You can look that research. You can research that stat. That is, it was 828, higher than Maricopa, higher than Cochise, higher than all the other counties. That was a Suzuki Law Firm point. The second thing I want to point out that the sheriff has mentioned several times is these pictures with guns. Okay. But I want to explain to you the predicament that I am in as a female. So in the very beginning, I would get these comments and they were very misogynistic, very double standard. And they would say, well, you're in a suit. Are you running for sheriff or PTO? Right. And so I would get these kind of comments to me. I've also been told that my name isn't very sheriff-like. I've also been told that my picture's nice and all, but I don't look like a sheriff. And so this double standard that would never happen to a male anywhere, even in a suit, has occurred to me over and over and over. So yes, I did go take pictures with an AR to show that I do wear a uniform. I can wear a uniform, but as you may or may not know, I cannot campaign in my uniform. The sheriff can because he's a sitting sheriff, but I cannot. And so I can't have my badges. I can't have anything in my photographs. And so people asked for that. And so that's why I ensured that I gave them what they asked for. Yes, I can wear a uniform. Yes, I can carry a gun. Those things were required of me because it's a world we live in that is unfortunately, those are the comments I'm getting, and I have to try to appease everybody, I guess, but it's very unfortunate. But I think the majority of voters are ready for a female. I would be the first female in the state of Arizona elected, and I think that's a big deal to be on that side of history.
All right, I can't believe it, but we're almost out of our hour, and we haven't had a chance to talk about the county jail. Sheriff Nanos, you said we need a new jail. The jail, I think we're talking about 600 million or so for a new jail, and more than 500 million to rehabilitate the current structure, according to a commission study. And those are rough numbers. But Sheriff Nanos, the future of the Pima County Jail.
Well, for me, it's just my opinion. We need a new jail, but that study is not done. What the Blue Ribbon Commission did was assess: do we need a new jail, or do we need to remodel the jail? What they also said was, you can't just do nothing. Everybody who has taken a tour of that facility, from politicians to news reporters and everybody, I step back. I allow my staff to do the tour. I don't want to influence them. They go through that jail. A lot of them are very pessimistic. You can imagine being a county board of supervisor who says, I want to raise $800 million on taxes. It's tough. It's a tough decision, but they all go in there. Some of the city council members all went in there believing that, I don't know. And every one of them, every single one of them came out saying, you need a new jail. You need to remodel. You got to do something. So I don't know. I'm not an engineer, but I would say this, what I do know. The correctional sciences say the safest jail you can have is one called direct supervision. That's not a new term. It's actually been around in 1969, it started, but it's evolved. When I first started in that jail as a CO in 1984, they had a tower. That was it. It was direct supervision. But it graduated and evolved into what we now have. Here's the best way I can tell you direct supervision works. If you have me over to babysit your child and you go away, I could be in the living room, your child's asleep in their crib or their bed, and I have a baby monitor. I could hear what's going on with the child. Maybe every 20, 30 minutes I go and I check and I open that door about this wide, because that's what our jail doors have, windows about this wide. And I look and see and everything's okay. And I go back to doing what I'm doing. Maybe it's playing Nintendo, watching TV, whatever. I guess that's safe. I guess that's babysitting. But is it the safest? Is that the safest, or would the safest be Chris Nanos is in the room 24/7 watching that child? That is safe. And that's what I suggest here. There are models. Australia has one. A prison. We don't need to reinvent this wheel. We just need to research. There are models in Australia that shows a jail. It's their maximum security prisons. They have 2 of them they built. And it shows it's basically an open bay, like a dormitory type living. All your COs, all your corrections officers are upstairs watching every inmate move. Do you know what their rooms consist of? They're not 12 to 18-inch thick walls. They're not steel doors that cost $22,000 a piece with a deadbolt that cost $1,800. They are just a basic empty shell of a room with cubicles like you see in offices that are about 4 foot high. Each cubicle has a bunk bed and a desk with a computer that has visitation on it, all the inmate's needs. He can order his welfare, his food, his commissary, whatever it is he needs, his interning visits, all of that. That's
just about out of time here. Let me ask Lieutenant Lappin, you've worked in the jail. Your thoughts on whether we need a new jail or rehabilitate our jail, or what your thoughts are on this question?
Well, it's a $500 million project. So we have to, first of all, figure out whether we're rehabilitating it or getting a new one. Is how are we going to pay for it? You can look around to other counties in the nation, and is a jail district something our community is willing to do? And how much money can we get from that? There's 35 million. I believe it was 35 million that Cochise got from the state to help with that jail. Obviously a drop in the bucket to $500 million. But the one thing I want to point out, and I know we're running out of time, is that the Blue Ribbon Commission did a great job. I fully trust their decision making, but who I think was lacking on that commission was the structural engineers or the architects or people that can really tell us, will this 40-year building last another 40 years, or do we need another building? There's consulting agencies like DLR that come in and build jails. Could we look at somebody like that to see what needs to happen? We do need to do something. You are right. I am in that jail, and there has to be something done. So that would be basically what I would say. We need to do a little bit more research. But having said that, the biggest thing, whether I believe in the direct supervision that Sheriff Nanos talks about, because what I have seen from being in the jail that's so important that we cannot ignore is that the inmate welfare and taking care of their basic, the hierarchy of needs is so important. And if we don't do that, we see what we've had in the last few years, right? With low staffing, we weren't able to get them out of their rooms. We weren't able to get them into the showers. We weren't able to get them exercise. Their mental health, their physical health, all declined. When you don't take care of your facility and you don't take care of the inmates, then you're going to have a bigger problem on your hands than needing a new jail.
Okay, we are out of time, and there's a lot more to talk about, and I apologize to both of you that we didn't get to it. But it is time for closing statements. Sheriff Nanos, 1 minute closing statement here.
Jim, I think, first of all, I thank you and the Clean Elections and for putting this on. Brian and Sarah for helping through this. So many topics, so much work. Talk about being able to communicate with your community. Everywhere I go, I give my cell phone out. This is no difference. It's 520-465-4052. And I get calls all the time from everybody, from all walks of life. And they are calls about people who have problems in their world that some may dismiss as small or minor problems. Community policing lets us deal with those issues and still handle those major calls for service. That's what I want to see us grow. That's where I want to see us going as an organization, is grow our community policing service, stay engaged with our community, use technology where we can to become more efficient. And last thing, the Blue Ribbon Commission did have architects who had built jails there. Sun Corporation was a part of that. The $500 million in jail, it could be $1 billion. Where they get that, a half-cent sales tax can, as a district jail tax, can raise $100 million overnight. They already know that from the RTA. That's just one area, but a jail tax, a jail district, a law enforcement tax, whatever you want to call it, public safety, we are the only county in all of Arizona that does not have one. So those are issues for the Board of Supervisors, Ms. Lesher to fight out, the public to vote on. That's their call. My opinion is you can't kick this can down the road sooner or later, because if I started to build a jail today, it's 10 years out. Sooner or later, we're going to have to do something. As far as I'm concerned, I thank this community. Their vote really matters. I hope they take it into heart and know that I do care and I am available. And I don't really need to be in Washington every week. And I don't need to be with partners who really don't have anything to do with Pima County. I need to deal with Pima County. And I hope you're satisfied with what we've done so far and the challenges we've met. And we'll keep doing that.
All right. Well, 1 minute, Lieutenant Lappin, closing statement.
I would like to say one thing. The National Sheriff's Association is a group of diverse men and women that are not constitutional sheriffs, and that is such a mischaracterization of the National Sheriff's Association. So I would like to say that. But what I want you to know about me is that I'm very genuine. I'm very authentic. You're not getting anything with me that I'm not going to pretend to be anything I'm not. I am telling you who I am. I'm telling you my experience. And the reason, and I believe wholeheartedly in a leader that has a high emotional intelligence. We know that from research that the lower the emotional intelligence, the higher the ego. And I would like to reverse that. I would like to get rid of the Dunning and Kruger effect. I would like to get that emotional intelligence up, that self-awareness up, and lower that ego so that I'm making decisions for the county, for the people. I do have, and I'm gonna say this out loud, but I do have the FOP and the Pima County Deputies Organization backing me. They are endorsing me, and those are two of the largest organizations we have in our department. And I think that speaks volumes as to who, and I have transparent votes. I can show you actual votes. But I believe that speaks volumes. I did a forum in Oro Valley, real quick. I did a forum in Oro Valley, and the entire back room was cops that work for the sheriff's department wearing my shirts. And I had everybody turn around and look at them. And I said, these men and women back there at the back of the room, they want me to be sheriff. And I think we should listen to who the deputies want to be their boss.
All right, we are going to have to leave it there. This does conclude our debate. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating. To the voters, we thank all of you who took the time to watch the debate and inform yourselves before the November 5th general election. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thank you for tuning in.